Hey, Doug Walker here. A few things real fast. First of all, we are going to do more Steven Universe vlogs. We know a giant bunch of episodes have been dropped by, so we are going to get to that for those who are wondering with these vlogs and reviews. Secondly, I want to talk to you about The Killing Joke, and a funny story I have at the very end of this. I won't give it away yet because it has a spoiler, but it's something funny about my observation of the comic, so a funny little story at the end. Okay, let's get to this actual real thoughts on The Killing Joke. Because everyone has been talking about this recently, and I said I don't want to talk about it unless I have something new I can talk about that everyone else isn't talking about. And I feel I do have something I can talk about that not that many people are talking about. The actual Killing Joke part. Because everybody talks about the first half hour, which is completely understandable, but they don't really focus that much on the meat of the story, on what it was based on, the Killing Joke portion of it. They mostly focus on this first half hour, and I will talk about that briefly, but I mostly want to talk about the actual Killing Joke part. And Rob hasn't seen this yet, so it's just gonna be me in this one. So yeah, I'll very quickly just address the opening half hour. Everything you heard is right. It sucks. It sucks hard. And really, it's just the writing. And I know it's like, what do you mean just the writing? Well, because the animation is good, the voice acting is fantastic, even the pacing is good, it's got good angles, it's visually interesting, the action is good. All of that is fine. But this is some of the worst writing ever put in a Batman animated anything. And everything you heard, you probably know about. You know, Batman and Batgirl have sex, which is totally out of left field. It focuses on Batgirl the whole first third. It has nothing to do with The Killing Joke at all. Like, they don't even weave it into the story or anything. The most it does is that it shows why Batgirl retires, which is really not a good reason, at least in my opinion. And pretty much the big deal that everyone has about Batman and Batgirl having sex is that you never felt like that was the relationship. You felt more kind of like a niece-uncle kind of thing. It's kind of like suddenly finding out that, like, Batman and Commissioner Gordon were having sex. It's like, was that the relationship? What? It just so does not fit. And maybe somewhere, I don't know, maybe somewhere in the comic it happens, but it's not the relationship we're familiar with. I much more believe that Batman and Jim Gordon are having sex before I believe Batman and Batgirl are having sex. And everything they say is right. It feels kind of misogynistic, even if they're trying to... The only excuse I could think of is that they're trying to make what happens to her in The Killing Joke a little more emotional because she kind of shows up and then she's just kind of gone in the story. So, but everything with The Killing Joke is establishing that this history already exists, and it's done through such clever writing. And I think that's the one last thing I'll say about the first half hour, is that the writing does not match the rest of the writing at all. I think that's the biggest problem. I know people talk about, you know, the way Batgirl is done terribly, and Batman is done terribly, and just everybody's done terribly in terms of the writing process. But for me, it's that none of the writing, just immediate difference. As soon as The Killing Joke starts, you can just tell everybody talks different. There's this kind of poetry to the writing, and I hate talking like that. I know it's pretentious, and it's not like The Killing Joke is like the perfect story, but it's pretty damn close. And you can just tell it's like, okay, well now we have people writing today for whatever, just a DC animated whatever, and then just this phenomenal writing, this phenomenal dialogue. Like when Christopher Nolan was at his best in the Dark Knight movies, like that's The Killing Joke. In fact, so many of the great Batman stories come from The Killing Joke. There are elements of, you know, Dark Knight took elements from it, and Batman Beyond Return of the Joker definitely took elements from it. So there's so many of these elements in there, and it comes mostly from this one story. So, okay, first half hour, they're right, it sucks. In my opinion, you could just fast forward to where you see the rain falling on the ground, just like in the comic. Even Batgirl opens up saying, you know, you may be wondering why I'm here, and this wasn't the story that you wanted. Well, I'm gonna tell it to you anyway. That's literally how it opens up. But the funny thing about that is that it is so separate from The Killing Joke. It is so separate from everything else, so bizarrely, that, for me anyway, it was very easy to separate the two. So as soon as The Killing Joke started, I had no problem totally erasing the last half hour. I mean, it was gone. Just gone. I had none of it impacted the story at all, so I'm just like, okay, as soon as the actual Killing Joke started, I'm okay. I am totally on board with this, and I'm ready to watch. And as the Killing Joke portion of this goes, like I said, half hour, gone. Just imagine that doesn't exist. I'm not going to trust it anymore. The Killing Joke portion, I think, is good. It's pretty damn strong. I've seen a couple of these animated DC movies, not a ton of them, I'll admit, and it's a little better than them. Which I know some people would think, well, this will be great, this will be phenomenal. It's pretty good, and the reason for that is they try their damnedest to stick as close to the comic as possible. That is both its strength and its weakness. It's its strength because, one, the writing is just beautiful. It is just phenomenal writing. And hearing Kevin Conroy, and especially Mark Hamill, say these words. You can tell he's been waiting forever to say these words, and it's like listening to Shakespeare. He just delivers them so perfectly. It's like almost chill-worthy how well he delivers these lines. And they try so hard to capture the artwork, like pretty much as close as they can, panel for panel. They really try to capture what the comic looked like. And that's tough. And I know you think it'd be very easy. Well, they're both hand-drawn. But it's very, very tough to incorporate that into animation, knowing what to keep still, how much of the shadow do you have in there, especially with CG coloring nowadays. And they find a really nice in-between. There's times where it needs to be hand-drawn shadows, and there's times where it has to be that CG kind of blur a little bit, and the gradient, so they do a very, very good job. And I originally thought the Joker was going to look too different for Mark Hamill's voice, but it really works. And both Hamill and Conroy do a good job. I'm just imagining them like when they first started doing Batman the Animated Series, and they do sound a little different. They sound like they've aged, but in a good way. This is a story where they're supposed to sound like they've aged. So I really felt like that was there, and that was very, very strong. The weakness of it is that they try so hard to stick to it and to get the panels and get word for word, for the most part. There's one or two additions and one or two things taken out. But they try so hard to keep to it that there's times where more changes needed to be made to make this great. I'll give you a perfect example. The Joker is in the amusement park. He's buying this amusement park. And he's being the Joker, and he's making his jokes, and he's gonna buy the place, and he's gonna kill this person, and then he looks and he sees this picture of the fat lady, and I know what this is gonna be. This is gonna be a transition to his past, and it's gonna remember when his wife was pregnant and so forth, but they don't do anything like that in terms of transition. They just dissolve, they just fade. And there he is. He's just there as a young man. He comes in and he's talking to his wife. And I felt, why couldn't you have a better transition? This whole thing is so visually well done, and the shadows, and there's all this sort of visual psychological stuff going on. Why couldn't you have a more interesting transition? And why couldn't you really have it kind of, they blend into each other? He talks about how his past, he half the time doesn't even remember it. It's almost like multiple choice. Again, something The Dark Knight took from this. But why couldn't you have it more hazy? Why couldn't you have it a little bit more harder to figure out? They just kind of do the brown and white. They have a little bit of jazz music playing whenever it's on. And I get that's what the comic did too, but I feel like every single time there's a flashback, it's like the tiniest hint that's like a trigger, but they don't even have like a white flash, or they don't even have like, there's so many good transitions happening nowadays, I think, in film. That's because we do have CG and we can do visually, so many more things are allowed. And there's a scene where it's like, the scene where he has Barbara there and he holds up the glass and he says, "To crime." And you just dissolve again to a flashback. And at the end of the flashback, he's looking down at his drink like, oh, that was the trigger. Well, why couldn't you have it where it's like he holds the glass up and then like when he puts it down, he's suddenly the young man again? Like maybe it's almost hard to even tell when it's present, when it's the past. And I felt like that was a huge missed opportunity, especially with animation. And I think on top of that, like the scene, I don't think I'm giving anything away. This guy transitions into the Joker, you know, in these flashbacks, and he goes in the bag of chemicals, and he comes out, and he's got the white face, and he goes nuts. And I felt, man, they got some good beginnings here, because he takes off the hood, and he looks down, he sees in his reflection in this water that he's the Joker. And he just sort of looks, and he starts laughing. And he does the famous pose like this. And I felt, why not drag that out even more? Why not take a chance and have it be a long period of kind of silence and maybe just a little laugh, and then it gets longer, and then it gets bigger, and then it just turns this giant psychotic thing, because that's kind of what comics can do. Everyone thinks it's just, oh, panel to panel, panel to panel, and you just read it all the way through, but people forget when there's like one panel of nothing going on, of no talking, of just kind of the silent moment, it lasts a while. When you're reading it. It isn't just a picture and then the next picture. It really, because comics have so much dialogue and so much going on, so much action, that when there's a still moment, that really leaves an impact. So I think it's something where there's some moments where I really felt like, man, if you took your time with this, if you really just said, let's slow down. Let's really take some time to sort of see what we can do with this visually and kind of with pacing and stuff. I think this could have been phenomenal. And I hate to go back to it, but with the, I do kind of wonder if, like, just that first half hour, if that wasn't there and that didn't distract, would we have had more time put into this, and would we have had more things fleshed out just a little bit more? It didn't need much. It just needed a little bit more. I felt like this was, like, really, really close. And I think the only addition I can recall in this that they added on top of the first half hour was that there's a song sequence, and I can't remember how many words are in, you know, the original comic, or they made them all up. It's okay. I kind of heard about it. I didn't know what to think of it. It felt kind of Joker. The Joker would sing if he could have a song and dance number while showing these gruesome photos, like he would do it. So it was okay. I was kind of hoping, like, if you're gonna do this, go even more crazy, just more crazy. You're supposed to be driving this guy mad, but it's done fine. I really felt if you're gonna put in a song sequence, though, if you're gonna go that far, the Joker's planning a song sequence. He's gonna make it an amazing song sequence, and it's just kind of meh, you know, it's just sort of taking the Killing Joke and putting a little song to it. I felt you could have really made that even creepier and more psychotic. You know, you could have done something really fun with the music and sort of the visuals, even more beyond what's in the Killing Joke. If you're gonna add something, really add something, but it's fine. The one thing I felt didn't work in the Killing Joke, I kind of feel bad saying this, I did not like the voice actor who did Commissioner Gordon. This is a guy who, you know, your heart's supposed to be with this guy. You're supposed to feel so sorry for this guy and just all the torment he's supposed to go to. I mean, this is really, in many respects, the guy who's pushed to the edge. And it's... I never bought any of it. I mean, any of it. This did not feel like... It didn't feel like the Gary Oldman one. It didn't feel like the one from... the Bob Hastings, is that his name? From the animated series. I mean, those were strong, good Gordons. And I don't know. This just felt very forced and very fake, and I could not get into the emotion of it. And that is a problem. I mean, because that is, like, the emotional center of the story. I know some people think it's Batgirl, but I mean, she's in it very briefly, and she's gone. That visual certainly sticks with you, but, you know, it's kind of there, and then it's gone. So I think with him not having that emotional strength there, I felt it suffered a little bit there too. But yeah, it's still so cool to see this comic that is just such a strong comic. I mean, it's such a strong story being brought to life in this animated realm, and I wish it could have been phenomenal, but then again, honestly, from what I heard going into this, I'm kind of glad I got what I got when it actually was the Killing Joke. And yes, it is awful that that first half hour is there, and that clearly so much work went into it. Like I said, it looks gorgeous, and the actors are great, and it's good pacing and everything, but it just has nothing to do with anything. It's like a short before a movie starts, except it just keeps going on, and then it tries to make the excuse that it has a connection, when it doesn't! It has no connection. And I've yet to see anyone that's like, that was a good addition. I have not met a person. This went from like being the most anticipated DC project for a long time. I shouldn't say that. Animated DC project. I mean, like, ever made, to a point where it's like they're showing in theaters and stuff, to the most despised. Like, as soon as that footage came out, everyone was like, what the hell have you done? And then when they saw it, it's like, nope, that didn't help. So it's very, very poorly written, and that's what ruins it. Everything else about it is fine, but it is just so horribly written, it can't recover from that. But like I said, because it is so separated for me, I can just very easily tune it out. I can pretend that never happened. It really has so little connection. It is not hard to do. It is not hard just to totally forget that first half hour happened. So with that taken out, and some people can't do that. That's going to be too distracting. That's going to be, how did this connect? Why was this here? Why was it? And I totally get that. I'm good at blocking that out. So as like a complete work, does it work? No, but as going from the Killing Joke on, I think it's pretty strong. It's not quite phenomenal. It's not quite great, but this is tricky. This is hard to make phenomenal. Transitions and adaptations are very, very difficult. And this one, granted, is so visually pleasing, and the story is so strong, the writing's so strong, but you gotta make those changes, and they do make a few. I think they needed a few more. I think they really needed to expand a little bit more to make it phenomenal. But as is, when the Killing Joke part starts, I think it's pretty damn good. And I would still recommend it, with the idea that you can just fast forward that first half hour. And it's not hard to spot. Even the visual style kind of looks different when you're fast forwarding. Just fast forward, look for the rain. When you see the rain on the ground, be like, okay, and this is where my movie is starting. And they didn't need to make it an hour and a half. It's not even that. It's an hour, 16 minutes. They didn't need to do that. I think people would have been totally happy with whatever it be, 40 minutes, 50 minutes, something like that, 45 minutes. I think we would have been totally satisfied, or you could have taken that extra time to really kind of explore this stuff a little bit more visually, and maybe with music, and maybe kind of with different angles. I think you could have stretched this out enough and we would have been okay, because it does not have to be a cinematic running time. It can be whatever you want. It's these DC anime movies. It can be whatever. And if for some reason there was something like, well, you can't show it in the theater unless it's this certain amount of time, show a Batman cartoon before. Show something from the animated series. We would love that. How cool would it be if we see a Batman and Joker cartoon, like, from the Batman animated series, and then you see the Killing Joke. Like, you just feel like all those years have passed in between, and you see the contrast between them. How great would have that been? But instead we have this dumb half hour, and it does suck. And like I said, I haven't seen anyone that likes it. Maybe you're out there, I don't know, but I haven't seen them yet. But yeah, so I would still recommend this. I really would. I would say just get the first half hour. So that's my take on it. I wanted a review that actually talked about the goddamn Killing Joke, because nobody was talking about the Killing Joke. And I totally understand. First half hour is unbelievably distracting, but yeah, I want people to actually talk about that main part and really focus on it. So I still highly recommend it. Now my Killing Joke story. Because this is so embarrassing, it makes me look like a dumbass, but I feel that's the fun thing of admitting it. So when I read Killing Joke, I read it when it first came out. I read when or at least around when the Batman movie came out, the Tim Burton one. And I saw this, and I was obsessed with the Dark Joker and everything. I read the story and went, whoa, holy shit, what was that? And I loved it. But here's the thing, and this gets into spoiler territory, so if you have not read the comics, seen the movie, this is literally the ending, so do not watch anymore. You know my opinion. At the very end of this story, I thought Batman killed the Joker. All these years, that's what I thought happened. And the reason for that is, in the movie, you see Joker tells his joke, his famous joke, and Batman starts laughing, and they both start laughing uncontrollably. And then, in this, you see quite clear that he puts his hands on the Joker's shoulders like that, like he's just laughing so hard he can't even contain himself, like he's almost kind of giving into the madness too. And they both have this really good laugh, and all the stuff you can read into that is just going to keep going, and the cycle and stuff like that, and they each give into the each other's own insanity. But in the comic, the way it was drawn, I thought he was strangling him. That is always what I thought was going on. I thought he was laughing, and as he was strangling him, he was still laughing. And then it cuts to the rain, and I just thought it was kind of left open whether or not he killed him. Now, some people might say, well, come on, it's the stories after that, show he's still alive and stuff, but it's kind of like in Mask of the Phantasm. It's like, yeah, it's continuing the story, but it's also kind of its own thing too, because anyone that's seen Mask of the Phantasm, you know how that ends. Or do you? How does that end? Kind of a similar idea. So I always thought for years the Killing Joke was the literal Killing Joke. I thought Joker said this joke, just finally pushed Batman over the edge. I mean, the whole thing is talking about, one of these days one of it's gonna kill the other, it has to stop, and I thought that was it, that was the joke, and he just axed him off. So I, for years, until I saw this, was under the impression that he most likely killed the Joker, and that is my incredibly stupid, dumbass way of looking at it. So I'll give the Killing Joke, the MA movie, that too. It's that it clarified something I clearly was not figuring out. I didn't know it was final, they didn't show the body or anything, but I thought they were hinting that he was actually strangling him, and then it cuts to the rain and we don't know what happened, kind of thing. So yeah, that's my dumbass moment. I just thought when I watched this, I was just like, oh, so that wasn't what I was supposed to interpret all these years. And I never really talked about it with anybody because I just kind of assumed it was obvious that, that's what Batman was doing, but it wasn't. He was putting his hands on his shoulders, so that's my incredibly embarrassing story about it. And it makes me look like a dummy, but I don't care. I think it's kind of funny. And if there's anything that we can take from these Killing Joke stories and interpretations and stuff, is that, you know what? A little humor can go a long way. So that's about it. That's my embarrassing story. That's my take on the Killing Joke. I hope you enjoyed it. And more vlogs and real thoughts and reviews are coming your way, so definitely keep an eye on those. Later.